28 pages hit the floor, torn clean. In front of 300 people who built their lives knowing exactly which side to stand on. Nobody moved. A man had just destroyed his son's future in a ballroom full of witnesses and was smiling about it. Security at the exits, accounts frozen. A family name revoked out loud like a verdict. He thought it was over. He didn't know a car had just pulled through the front gate. He didn't know who was in it. He didn't know that the woman he'd just tried to erase was somebody's son's daughter, and that somebody was already at the door. She had worn it every day for 15 years. Tonight, she almost left it home. The dog tag sat on the edge of the locker shelf while she changed. Thin chain, old metal. The kind of old that came from 15 years of being worn against skin every single day without once being taken off. The engraving on the face had gone soft at the edges from contact and time. She looked at it for longer than she needed to. Then she picked it up, put it on, tucked it inside the neckline of the naves against her sternum, against her skin, where it always went. She looked at herself in the mirror for 4 seconds, fine. She picked up her bag and walked out. Shift had ended at 6:53. Not 7, not on the hour. 6:53, because the last patient, a 4-year-old boy named Christopher, room 7/3 bed from the window, had spiked a fever at handoff, and nobody was walking away from that until his temperature came down. Nobody except Naomi. She stayed, because that was the job, not the job description, the actual job. The one that existed before work and after the paycheck, and in every space between where a small person needed someone to remain in the room. She was 34 years old. She had been doing this for 6 years. She had never once left a shift exactly on time. Her supervisor called it dedication. The overnight nurse called it stubbornness. Naomi called it Tuesday. The locker room was empty by the time she got there. She moved fast, not because she was excited, because she had 40 minutes before Cole would pull up to the hospital entrance in that silver sedan, already apologizing before she opened the door. He apologized in advance now. That was a recent thing. A thing that had started approximately 3 months ago when his father had looked at Naomi across a dinner table and said out loud to his own son with Naomi sitting right there, "You know where this is going, right?" Like she was a weather pattern, a forecast, something to be tracked and prepared for, and eventually endured. She opened her locker. The dress was hanging inside, zipped in his garment bag. She had put it there this morning because she did not trust herself to go home first. If she went home first, she would sit on the couch. She would eat something standing over the kitchen sink. She would look at the ceiling for 20 minutes, telling herself she was resting, and then she would be asleep before 9. And Cole would show up to an empty apartment, and that would be its own kind of conversation she did not have the energy to have. So, the dress was in navy blue, simple. She had bought it herself 3 weeks ago on a Thursday during her lunch breaks from a 2-block hospital. So from a shop, she had tried it on once, decided it fit, paid for it, and walked back to work in under 25 minutes. She was not a woman who agonized over dresses. She changed quickly, found the small gold earrings at the bottom of her bag, the ones that looked like they cost more than they did, which was the entire point. The pediatric ward smelled like antiseptic and apple juice, and sometimes on the good days, like the lavender hand lotion one of the night nurses kept at the station. Tonight it smelled like antiseptic. She passed the nurse's station on her way out. Keisha was already deep in handoff notes, one earring in, one not yet, reading glasses pushed up onto her hair in a position that served no optical purpose whatsoever. "You're staying late again," Keisha said. "Not a question. Christopher's fever broke. I know. I just checked. Then you know why I stayed." Keisha looked up. She had a look, a very specific look, the ones that said she had several opinions and had decided as a professional courtesy to keep most of them to herself tonight. "You look nice," she said. "Thank you." "Cole's family thing?" A pause. Brief. "Yeah." Keisha went back to her notes in the deliberate way people return to tasks when they have already said everything they are going to say. "Drive safe," she said. "Always." 3 times. That was how many times Naomi had been in the same room as Raymond Hargrove. 3 times in 2 years, not accidental. Raymond Hargrove was the kind of man who controlled how often people existed in his proximity. He decided who got access, who got time, who mattered enough to be acknowledged when they walked in. Naomi had clocked this immediately. First meeting. She had clocked it, filed it, and kept walking, because she had met men like Raymond before. Not men with his money. Not men with his particular brand of practiced contempt. But emphasis decided before you opened your mouth what category you belonged to. Men who looked at you and saw not a person but a variable to be assessed and sorted and placed accordingly. She had learned a long time ago that you could not argue your way out of that category. You could not charm your way out. You could not achieve your way out. You could only wait and work and let time do what time always did. The first time was dinner, 6 months before the wedding. Cole had arranged it carefully. Neutral restaurant, public space. All the things you did when you were trying to give a situation the best possible chance. Raymond arrived 7 minutes late. He sat down, looked at Naomi, looked at his menu, did not extend his hand. Not an oversight. The dinner lasted 90 minutes. There were 5 natural moments where a handshake would have occurred between reasonable people meeting for the first time. Raymond let each one pass without acknowledgement. He spoke to Cole for most of it. Occasionally, he directed questions toward Naomi, but in the way questions get directed when the asker does not actually want an answer. When the question is a test and not an inquiry. What kind of nursing? He asked at one point. Pediatric critical care, she said. He nodded. Like she had told him about a hobby. The drive home, Cole gripped the steering wheel and said, "He's warming up. He just needs time." Naomi looked out the window. She did not say what she was thinking. She was very good at not saying what she was thinking. The second time was Thanksgiving, 3 months after the wedding, Cole's family home in Greenwich. 12 people around a table, long enough that you could theoretically avoid everyone who made you uncomfortable, which was the architectural feature of old money that Naomi found most honest about it. Raymond said it in the kitchen. She was getting water. He was walking through. He stopped in the doorway and looked at her, and then looked past her, as though Cole was standing somewhere behind her. "Your wife seems to have made herself at home," he said, to no one in particular. "I have," she said. He looked at her for a moment, then walked away. She stood in that kitchen for 30 seconds. Then she picked up her glass and went back to the table. The third time was not a meeting. There was a letter arrived on a Thursday. She was at work. Cole was in a meeting. The envelope was addressed to her alone, her name, her address. Her title omitted, not Naomi Hargrove. Just Naomi Reed, as if the marriage had not occurred, as if the name had not changed, as if Raymond was acknowledging only what he had already decided was true. Inside, a check. $75 Disowned, payable to Naomi Reed, and a single sheet of paper, typed. Censored on the page like the formatting itself was meant to convey authority. To compensate for your time, please, step away quietly. This arrangement benefits everyone. She read it twice, then a third time. Not because she didn't understand it. She understood it perfectly. She read it a third time to make sure she was feeling what she was actually feeling, not what she was supposed to feel. She was supposed to feel ashamed, or threatened, or small. She felt none of those things. She felt something cleaner than anger, something without a precise name, something that started at the base of her spine and moved upward and settled behind her sternum like a weight she was prepared to carry for as long as necessary. She did not tear the check up. Tearing it up would have been dramatic and also irreversible. Instead, she took out her phone, photographed the letter, saved it to a folder labeled Documents. Then she refolded everything, the check, letter, placed that back in the envelope, wrote 6 words on the outside in her own handwriting, and mailed it back to Raymond's office the following morning. 6 words, "Return to sender, wrong address." She never mentioned it to Cole. She put the photograph in the Documents folder and went back to work. Cole had the car running when she came outside. He saw her through the windshield and got out, which he didn't need to do. But he did it anyway, standing on the sidewalk in his good jacket in the October cold, because Cole Hargrove had been raised with certain instincts, and some of them were Glenn Safety. "You look." "Don't," she said, not unkindly. "I was going to say beautiful. I know what you were going to say." She got in the car. He stood there a second, then got back in, the engine idle. Neither of them moved immediately. "I called Jade," she said. "How is she?" She said what she always says. "Which is?" Naomi buckled her seatbelt. "She said, why are you doing this?" Cole exhaled slowly through his nose. He did that when he was choosing words. She had learned this in their first year together. The exhale meant he cared enough to think before speaking. She still loved that about him, even when what came after was not what she wanted to hear. "We don't have to go," he said. "Yes, we do, me." Cole, she turned to look at him. I'm not hiding. I've never hidden. I'm not starting tonight. He held her gaze for a moment. You sure? Drive. He drove. She called Jade at the first red light anyway. Jade picked up on the second ring, which meant she had been waiting. Jade always waited by the phone when Naomi was about to do something Jade thought was a terrible idea. It was a form of love particular to younger sisters. You're in the car, Jade said. We're going. Silence, loud silence. The specific silence of a 22-year-old who has opinions and is attempting, with partial success, to not deploy all of them at once. Jade, I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. I have an exam Monday, Jade said. I'm just putting that out there. In case something happens tonight, and you need someone available who isn't Cole and isn't Dad and has a flexible enough schedule to, nothing is going to happen. You don't know that. I know Raymond Hargrove. That's exactly my point. The light changed. Cole pulled forward. He was working very hard at appearing not to hear this conversation. I'll call you after, Naomi said. Call me during. If you need to use the bathroom, take your phone. Jade, I'm serious. Bathroom, phone. She almost smiled. Almost. Good night, Jade, Jade said, fast, like she was getting it in before the call ended. I love you too. She hung up, put the phone in her bag. Cole glanced over. She thinks this is a bad idea. She's 22. That's not an answer. It is, actually. The house was a 40-minute drive from the city, Greenwich. The kind of house that communicated itself before you reached the front door. Iron gates. A long driveway with landscaping that cost more per month than Naomi's rent. Exterior lighting that illuminated the facade the way museums illuminate paintings, deliberately at angles calculated to produce maximum reverence. She had been here once before. Thanksgiving. She knew what the inside looked like. The whistlings, the marble. The way sound moved differently in rooms that absorbed and then released with a faint echo, like voices in a place that expected to be listened to. She knew what it felt like to walk into that space. She was walking into it anyway. Cole found parking on the far side of the circular drive. He turned off the engine and sat. I need you to know something, he said. She waited. Whatever he says tonight, whatever happens. I'm standing next to you, not behind you, not across the room, next to you the whole time. She looked at him. He was not performing this. Cole Hargrove, for all the complexity of loving someone whose family had been built to exclude her, he was not performing right now. You said that before, she said. I'm saying it again, and she put her hand on his. 1 second. Then she opened the door. The sound reached them before the door opened. 300 people in a large room, crystal on crystal, low laughter. A string quartet playing something from Vivaldi with the kind of precision that costs real money to hire. The door opened. A young man in a black vest held it without looking at either of them. They stepped inside. The foyer alone was the size of Zemi's entire floor at work. Persian rug, wall sconces. A portrait of Raymond Hargrove above the staircase, oil on canvas, approximately 6 tall, lit from below in the way that monuments get lit. She looked at it for 1 second, moved on. Inside the ballroom, Osen Holt stood at the far end of the bar. He was Raymond's legal counsel, had been for 19 years. A careful man, quiet, the kind who existed in the background of other people's worst decisions and emerged afterward with his own hands technically clean. His phone had buzzed 22 minutes ago. A calendar notification, confirmations. He had scrolled through quickly and then stopped. Read Vance Desk Defense Group. Chairman confirmed. Table 1. He read it twice, put his phone in his pocket, ordered water, not wine, not bourbon, water, and said nothing to Raymond. He stood at the bar and watched the door. Raymond was near the center of the room, bourbon, his third of the evening, laughing at something a hedge fund manager had said. The particular laugh of a man who had just done exactly what he intended to do and felt very good about the result. Not an hour ago, he had watched his son walk through his front door with his daughter-in-law, and he had been ready. He had been ready since morning. He looked up and saw Naomi. The laugh stopped, not gradually, immediately. Because Raymond Hargrove's greatest talent, the one that had built everything he had, was the rapid assessment of what a person was worth, what category they belonged to, and therefore how they should be treated. He had been running this calculation automatically for 40 years. He ran it on Naomi the moment he saw her, and the result had been the same every single time, and tonight was no different. He set his bourbon down, straightened his jacket, said something brief to the man next to him, dismissal dressed as courtesy, and began moving across the room. The crowd parted. not dramatically. Just the instinctive clearing of a path that happens when a man moves through a space he owns, with the full weight of that ownership behind him. Cole saw him first. He put his hand on Naomi's arm, light, not hiding her. She had already seen him. Raymond stopped 3 feet away, close enough that the bourbon was faintly present. Close enough that she could read his expression clearly, like not hot anger, not the explosive kind, something colder and more deliberate. The expression of a man who had made a decision before he crossed the room and was now executing it. Cole. He did not look at Cole when he said it. Dad, I gave you one instruction. She's my wife. Yes. Raymond looked at Naomi then, the way an appraiser looks at something before assigning it no value. She is. He turned slightly toward the room, not fully, just enough. This event is for people of a certain standing, he said. His voice carried without effort the voice of a man who had never needed to raise it to be heard. People who have built something. People with a foundation that earns them a place in this room. He paused. This woman works at a public hospital. She grew up in public housing. She has no family name and no foundation that makes her appropriate for this room, and yet, he spread one hand, a gesture that took in the whole space. Here she is. The string quartet did not stop playing immediately, but the conversations around them did. First one cluster, then another, then another. Silence spreading outward from Raymond like a rill from something dropped in still water. 300 people finding their shoes suddenly fascinating. Naomi did not move, did not look away, did not grip Cole's arm. She had made a decision somewhere between the hospital and this room about what tonight was allowed to take from her. And the answer was nothing she had not chosen to give. I'm not here to fight with you. Whoa, she said. No, Raymond agreed. You're not here at all. That was the arrangement. There was no arrangement, Cole said. There was an offer. Raymond reached into his jacket, withdrew an envelope, set it on the nearest cocktail table without looking at it, the way you set down something that has already served its purpose. 28 pages. My attorneys drafted this yesterday. It outlines the terms under which Naomi Reed Hargrove waives all claims against Hargrove family assets, every trust, every account, every property, past and future. He looked at Naomi. Sign it. Stay. Sit at the back. Eat the food. Go home when it's over. Do that, and we never have to have this conversation again. Naomi looked at the envelope. She did not reach for it. Cole did. He opened it, flipped through pages with the focused attention of a man looking for something specific. He found it on page 14. A clause Raymond had not read aloud. A clause dressed in the careful language of financial protection that meant, if you read it slowly and understood what the words were actually doing, if Naomi signed, and if the shared finances of their marriage became in any way dependent on Hargrove family access, which the clause had been specifically constructed to ensure, then in any dispute over residential or financial stability, determining authority would rest with the family trust, with Raymond. This was not a prenuptial agreement. This was a leash attached to a trapdoor. Cole looked up from the document. He looked at his father. The way you look at something when you finally see it without the years of conditioning softening the edges, when you see it exactly as it is, not larger, not smaller, just itself. He tore the document in half. One motion, clean. The sound of it, paper tearing in a room that had gone silent, caught through the air and landed on every surface. It was not a loud sound, but it had weight. Raymond's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes went very still. You are removing yourself, he said, from everything I have built. The trust, the position, the apartment, every resource you access because of this family. All of it gone. Okay, Cole said. Raymond blinked. Just once. He had not expected that word. I'm not bluffing. I know you're not. Then you understand what you're choosing. Yes, Cole said. Do you? Raymond let the silence run 3 full seconds. Then he turned to the room. 300 people in designer clothes, making themselves as small as possible. 300 people who had built careers on knowing when to speak and when to disappear into the furniture. My son, Raymond said, addressing the room the way he addressed board meetings, has decided to choose this woman over everything his family has built, over 3 generations of work, over legacy, over sunsets. He paused. I want everyone in this room to witness the choice. He pointed at the door. Get out of my house. Not a request, not an ultimatum with room for negotiation, a disposal. The same tone you use for things that no longer served a function. Naomi held herself very still, because the room was what? because some of the phone angles had shifted in ways that were not casual, because this moment, this specific one, would either take something from her or it would not. And she had decided, in the locker room, in the car, in the 30 seconds after Raymond started moving across the floor, that it would not. She had been told she did not belong in rooms before, in hospital corridors, in department meetings where she was the only one who looked like her, in the particular silence of conversations that stopped when she walked in. She had been told it in 100 small ways by 100 people who never had to say the word directly. She was still here every single time. Mr. Hargrove, Raymond looked at her. Patient cold. I graduated magna laude from Columbia University. I have worked pediatric critical care for 6 years. I have saved the lives of children whose names you will never know. I have never taken a dollar from this family, a breath, even. And I came here tonight because I am your son's wife, and I have every right to be in this room. Rem tilted his head. And yet, he said quietly, which was worse than if he had shouted, none of that changes what you are. Not he. The considered opinion of a man who had thought this through and arrived at his conclusion and was entirely comfortable living inside it. Cole took her hand, fingers lacing together. We're leaving, he said, only to her. She looked at him at the set of his face, not rage, not wounded pride, something quieter and more durable than both. They turned toward the door. Raymond called after them. One more thing, because men who operate the way Raymond operated do not stop when they have won. They stop when they have destroyed. When the money runs out, he said, to the room as much as to them, and you see what she actually is, you'll be back. They always come back. Cole did not stop walking. Naomi did not stop walking. The door opened. The foyer air was cooler, almost startling after the temperature of the ballroom. The portrait above the staircase caught the light from both Valso sconces. Raymond Hargrove, 6 feet of oil paint and certainty. She walked past it without looking. The hum of the ballroom dimmed behind the heavy door. She stopped, just stopped. In the middle of the Persian rug, in the gold light of the foyer, she stopped walking and stood there and breathed. Her hands were shaking. She looked down at them. She had not felt them shaking in the ballroom. She had felt nothing in the ballroom, which was either a gift, a debt. She ran back now with interest. Cole came around in front of her. He didn't speak. He stood close and looked at her face with the focused attention of a man assessing damage he is afraid to find. I'm okay, she said. I know. I need a second. Take it. She breathed, the way she had learned to breathe on difficult shifts when something went wrong in a patient room, and she had 30 seconds to be completely steady before she walked through the door. She reached up, found the dog tag through the fabric of the dress, pressed against it. E.R. warm. Always warm. Did you call your father? Cole asked. She shook her head. Should we? He already knows, she said. Cole went still. I called Jade before we left the car. Jade called him. She always calls him, before she calls anyone else. Naomi paused. Found the exact words. He called me right before we walked in. I didn't pick up. Cole stared at her. He's outside right now. He's been outside, sitting in the car. For how long? Long enough. A beat. He said he couldn't decide whether to come in politely or come in like a general. Cole's expression moved through several things quickly. What did he decide? The corner of her mouth moved, just barely. He said he was coming in as a father, because that's worse. The foyer held its silence. The sets in from outside through the heavy front door, the sound of a car door closing, footsteps on gravel, slow, even, completely unhurried. The footsteps of a man who had walked into rooms far more dangerous than this one, and had walked out of every single one of them. The doorbell rang. One chime, long, deliberate. Naomi looked into the door. Cole looked at Naomi, 3 full seconds. Then Naomi crossed the foyer, reached out her hand, and opened it. Cole was 63 years old. 6'2", silver hair cut close to the head. A charcoal suit that fit the way suits fit when they are made for a specific body, and that body has not changed in 20 years. A small American flag pin on the left lapel. No watch visible, no rings. Nothing that announced itself. He did not need anything that announced itself. He stepped into the foyer, and the foyer became a different space. Not because he was physically imposing, though he was. Because he carried something that changed the air around him. A quality of complete stillness that was not the absence of energy, but the total command of it. The kind that develops in men who have spent decades making decisions in rooms where the cost of the wrong one was measured in lives. Naomi stood 3 feet away. He looked at her first. Always her first. He crossed to her in 4 steps and took both her hands in his and held them. Not a hug. Not yet! Just held her hands and looked at her face the way a man looks when he has been dreading this assessment and is now conducting it anyway. "You okay?" he said. Low, just for her. She nodded. He looked at her another second. The way fathers look when they know, the nod is not the whole truth, but understand, this is not the moment to press for the rest of it. Then he released her hands, turned to Cole. He extended his hand. Cole took it. The grip held one beat longer than a standard handshake, the beat that communicates something words would make clumsy. "You did right. I know what it cost." Cole's throat moved. He nodded once. Elton straightened his jacket. One small adjustment, purely habitual, looked toward the ballroom doors. The sound of 300 people filtered through the wood, muffled and unaware. "Which one is he?" Elton said. "You can't miss him," Naomi said. Elton nodded. "Let's go correct that." He pushed both doors open. Not with force, not with aggression. He simply pushed them the way a man pushes doors when it does not occur to him that they might resist. Both panels swung wide, and the sound of the ballroom came rushing out, and Elton Reed walked into Raymond Hargrove's annual gala the way he walked into every room he entered. Like he had always been on the list, because he had been. That was part nobody in the room knew yet. The string quartet was mid-phrase. They stopped in pieces, the cellist first, then the second violin, then the others in sequence, each musician registering in turn that the room had shifted underneath them. The music died note by note, which was somehow more affecting than if it had stopped all at once. 300 heads turned, not because anyone announced him, because something in the pressure of the room changed, the way it changes before weather arrives. That particular atmospheric shift the body registers before the conscious mind has named it. Elton moved through the center of the room. People stepped aside. Not because they were asked, because it simply did not occur to them to stand in his path. He walked with the unhurried deliberateness of a man who understood that speed was for people who were uncertain of their destination. He was not uncertain of anything. Raymond was near the bar, bourbon in hand, freshly poured, laughing at something a hedge fund manager had said. The full, easy laugh of a man who had just executed exactly what he had planned and was basking in the warmth of his own efficiency. He glanced toward the entrance. The laugh stopped, not gradually, the way a power line goes when something severs it, complete and immediate cessation. Because Raymond Hargrove's greatest skill, the thing that had built every room he stood in, was the instant calculation of a person's weight, their leverage, their category. He had been running this calculation for 40 years without conscious effort, the way other people breathe. He ran it on Elton Reed in the first 3 seconds. The result came back accurate, and the accuracy was the problem. The bourbon glass tilted in his hand. A single drop ran over the rim. He did not notice. His knuckles had gone pale against the glass. Owen Holt at the far end of the bar closed his eyes. He had known for 22 minutes at bits. The gas confirmation had come through on his phone while Raymond was mid-sentence about something that no longer mattered. Owen had read it twice, put his phone away, ordered water, and said nothing. 19 years of legal counsel had given him an excellent instinct for when a ship was going down and when to quietly relocate to the lifeboat. He had relocated. Elton stopped in front of Raymond, close enough that Raymond had to look up slightly. Not dramatically, just enough to matter. "Raymond, even." Unhurried, no performance in it at all.
"We have met before." Raymond opened. Nothing came out.
Was for Raymond Hargrove an event without precedent in recent memory. "The Capital Defense Procurement Dinner," Elton said. 2 years ago. You waited 41 minutes in the reception line to introduce yourself to me. He held eye contact without blinking. "Your office called mine 3 times the following month. Contract extension inquiry. My assistant handled it." The room was completely silent now. 300 people, and the only sounds were the faint settling of the old house and the soft collapse of a banned ice in glasses that no one was drinking from. Raymond found his voice. It came thinner than he had ever heard it. "General Reed, there's been I had no idea, that she was my daughter." Raymond stopped. "You had no idea," Elton said, "that the woman you just ordered out of your home was someone's daughter." Or a pause, timed with the precision of a man who understood the weight of silence. "You assumes that no one who mattered would ever find out how you treat people you've decided don't count." The things I said, family situations, emotions. You drafted a 28-page legal document yesterday morning. Raymond blinked. You positioned your own security staff at the exits tonight. You froze your son's financial accounts from this room with a phone call. Elton's voice did not rise. It was already at the exact register that filled the room without effort. That is not emotion running high. That is preparation. Those are the choices of a man who planned this in advance. Raymond's right hand came up, an open gesture. The language of men who settled things over handshakes and good bourbon, and the mutual understanding that certain difficulties could be managed between reasonable people. He started using the wrong name entirely, which was its own kind of tell. Elton looked at the hand. He did not take it. He let it remain there, suspended in the air between them, received by no one. 300 people watched Raymond Hargrove's hand hang unanswered in front of a man who had decided it was not worth taking. Raymond lowered it. Elton reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. He withdrew a business card, cream, heavy stock. He placed it on the bar in front of Raymond with 2 fingers, setting it down with the deliberate care of someone placing the final piece of something. Raymond looked at it. Elton Reed, chairman. Reed Vance Defense Group. The same Reed Vance that held a $8 billion federal contract with Hargrove Capital Holdings. The contract representing 38% of Hargrove Capital's annual operating revenue. The contract that, if pulled, would not merely damage the company. It would gut it from the inside. Raymond's free hand found the edge of the bar, gripped it. My daughter, Elton said, a graduated magna law friend from Columbia University School of Nursing. She has worked pediatric critical care for 6 years. She has saved children's lives in rooms you will never enter. She has never once used my name to open a door, secure a meeting, or move to the front of any line. He paused. Everything she has, she built herself. With her own hands, on her own time. Without asking me for a single thing except to be left alone to do it. Another pause. Slower. She chose not to use my name because she needed to know, that what she built was entirely hers, that nobody could ever say it was handed to her. He let that settle. That is the woman you called a welfare case tonight, in front of every person in this room. Ramsett said nothing, because there was nothing to say that would not make it worse, because the math was complete and the answer was not in his favor, and Raymond, whatever else he was, had always been good enough at math to know when a calculation was finished. Surely, Raymond tried again, and the word surely had never sounded so desperate in the history of its usage. This doesn't need to affect our business relationship. Reed Vance and Hargrove Capital have a productive history. That history doesn't have to. You're right, Elton said. We do have a history. He reached into his jacket again. This time he retrieved his phone. He dialed without looking at the screen. The call connected on the second ring. The room heard every word. Andrew, it's Elton. Full review of all Reed Vance contracts with Hargrove Capital. Every react clause, every renewal cycle. Documentation on my desk by Monday morning. Yes, all of it. A pause. Thank you. He hung up, looked at Raymond. 48 hours, he said. Step back from the company publicly. Issue an apology. A real one. Not the document your lawyers will draft at 2 in the morning. Understand that what happened in this room tonight does not stay in this room. He put the phone away. My legal team will be in contact. Raymond's grip on the bar tightened. Then something in his shoulder gave, some long structural tension releasing all at once, and the bourbon glass slipped from his other hand and hit the marble floor. Sharp, final. The sound of it was the loudest thing that had happened in that room all evening. 300 people flinched in unison and then went completely rigid. Raymond stared at the pieces on the floor, at the spreading dark stain on pale marble. Then he looked at Elton, and in his eyes, for the first time all evening, was something honest. Not remorse, not yet, but understanding. The clear, cold understanding of a man who has just registered that the ground beneath him has been moving for longer than he knew. He found the nearest chair. It was a small chair, decorative. The kind that existed at events like this to look appropriate and be leaned against during photographs. It was not designed to support a man's full weight at the moment his life reorganized itself. It held him anyway. He sat, and said nothing. Holt was already moving. He collected his briefcase from the bar stool where he had set it 2 hours earlier. He crossed the room with the quiet efficiency of an acting the boss body had made before his mind finished making it. He positioned himself near the foyer entrance, near Cole's side of the room. Not beside him, not yet, but on that side, which was the only side that mattered now. The physical distance from Raymond communicated everything that needed to be communicated without a single word being spoken. He would call Cole on Monday morning. Both of them understood this without saying it. Bet Hargrove had been standing at the top of the staircase, not participating, not descending, just standing at the top, one hand on the banister, watching. She had been there for most of it, long enough to have heard every word Raymond said before Elton arrived, and every word after. She came down the stairs now, slowly, one step at a time, not dramatic. Just a woman descending stairs in her own home, which she had done 10,000 times, except that this time felt nothing like any of those times. The ballroom floor. She did not go to Elton. She did not go to Naomi. She walked to Raymond and stopped in front of him and looked at her husband of 34 years, sitting in a chair that was too small for him with broken glass on the floor at his feet. "Enough," she said. 2 syllables. That was all. 34 years of marriage. 34 years of standing in the background of rooms like this with Swan, smiling at the right moments, redirecting conversations that were heading somewhere damaging, managing the soft perimeter of a life that had been built entirely on Raymond's terms. 34 years, and those 2 syllables were the first words she had ever directed at him in public that were not in service of his image. She turned, walked to the entrance, did not look back. Nobody in the room moved until the sound of her heels had crossed the foyer and the front door had opened and closed. Raymond called for Owen. "Get me a lawyer," he said. "Now." Owen looked at him from across the room. He held the look for a moment, not unkindly, but without apology. "I'm sorry, Raymond," he said. "I can't represent you in this." He walked out. Raymond looked around the room. 300 faces looked back. Not one of them offered anything useful. Not a gesture, not a word, not even the small mercy of looking away quickly. They just looked at him with the expressions of people who have witnessed something that cannot be unwound and are already composing how they will describe it to someone else later. The room that had been built to reflect his power was now reflecting something else entirely. Naomi found Elton in the foyer 10 minutes later. Cole was outside. He had understood without being told that she needed this conversation without him in it, and he had given her the space before she could ask. She loved that about him. She had loved it from early on, and she loved it still. She stood with her father in the cooler air of the hallway. The portrait of Raymond above the staircase looked down at both of them with the serene confidence of oil paint, which does not revise itself for circumstances. "You didn't have to come," she said. "Yes, I did. I could have handled Naomi." Not sharp, just certain. The voice he used when the conversation was not actually a question. "I know you could have handled it. That's not why I came." She looked at him. "I came because you're my daughter, and what was said in that room tonight required a response from this family." He paused, a small adjustment to the flag pin. "Not because you can't stand up for yourself, you just proved you can, but because some things require a father to be in the room, even when the daughter doesn't ask." She was quiet for a moment. "Then I don't want you to use the contract as the thing that ends this." He looked at her. "Not as a weapon," she said. "Not the phone call that terminates everything by Monday. I want you to submit the HID documentation to the Federal Procurement Office. The 3 contract cycles where the minority-owned subcontractors were cut. All of it goes through the right process. Federal review. Proper audit trail." He waited. "Not because of what he said to me tonight," she continued. "Because of what he did to those companies. They were qualified. They did the work. They deserved those contracts, and he took them because of who they were. That needs to be corrected for its own sake, not as a side effect of what happened to us." Elton was quiet. Outside, Cole's footsteps on the gravel of the driveway, the sound of him pacing the way he did when he was working through something and needed to move while he did it. "That process takes time," Elton said. "I know. Months. Longer. Possibly." "I know. You're certain?" Naomi looked at the portrait of Raymond Hargrove above the staircase. 6 feet of oil and certainty. She looked at it without heat, without the lingering edge of what had happened in the room behind her. Just looked at it as what it was, a painting of a man who had built something large and built it wrong and was now living inside the consequences of that. "I have been patient my entire life," she said, "for things that mattered. I can be patient for this." Elton studied his daughter for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Once We do it right, he said. We do it right, she said. They stood together in the hallway for another minute, not talking. Just standing in the same space, which was its own kind of conversation, the kind that 34 years of being father and daughter made possible. Then Naomi said, Cole's going to wear a whole way. He's a pacer, Elton said. I noticed. He thinks before he speaks. I noticed that too. A pause. It's a good quality. I know. Elton looked at the front door. Go get your husband. Take him home. She went. The audio surfaced at 11:14 that night. Nobody ever confirmed who had recorded it. The clip was 3 minutes and 40 seconds. The video was shaky, the kind of handheld footage shot at chest height by someone trying not to be noticed, but the audio was clean. The particular clarity that came from a quality phone microphone in a room that had gone completely silent at exactly the right moment. Raymond's voice was unmistakable. The phrase welfare case, the word filth. The moment he turned to 300 people and described what his son had chosen to bring into his family. All of it clean, clear, and entirely without the context Raymond would have preferred to have wrapped around it. It hit the internet at 11:14. By midnight, it had 4 million views. By 2 in the morning, 9 million. Jade called Naomi at 2:17. Naomi was awake. She had been awake since they got home. Not anxious. She had passed through anxious sometime out around a drive back and had come out the other side into something calmer and harder. She was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea that had gone cold, while she was not paying attention to it. Are you seeing this? Jade said. I'm seeing it. 9 million people, Naomi. I know. There are reporters outside your building. I know. How are you? Jade. Naomi wrapped both hands around the cold cup. I'm okay, I'm tired, and I'm okay, and I need you to go to sleep so you can study for your exam. Silence. I'm at the exam right now. I know, but I do. Go to sleep. Will you call me tomorrow? Promise? First thing, Jade, go to sleep. She heard her sister exhale slowly. Then, I love you. I love you too. She put the phone on the table, looked at the cold tea. The kitchen was quiet, the way kitchens are quiet at 2 in the morning, which was a specific kind of quiet that had nothing hostile in it, just the small sounds of a space at rest. The refrigerator, the building settling, rain starting at some point against the window. Cole came in from the bedroom doorway. He had not been asleep either. He sat down across from her without being asked. Did not say anything immediately. After a moment, how are you doing, actually? She gave him the real answer, which she did not give most people. Tired, she said. Not just from tonight, from the whole length of it. From knowing for 2 years that something like this was coming and waiting for it, and then having it arrive exactly as badly as I knew it would. Breath. There's a specific kind of tired that comes from being right about something you hope to be wrong about. Cole nodded. But, she said, I know what you did, what we didn't give up, and that's something I can carry. He reached across the table, put his hand over hers. They sat like that for a while, not talking, just sitting in the kitchen at 2 in the morning while 9 million strangers watched a video of the worst hour of their recent lives on small, glowing screens. Eventually, Cole said, Come to bed. In a minute, he went back to the bedroom. She sat a little longer. Then she got up, poured the cold tea down the drain, rinsed the cup and turned off the kitchen light. She reached inside her shirt, found the dog tag, held it for a moment in the dark, ER. She tucked it back against her skin and went to bed. By 5:30, the stories was on every major news network in the country. By the time Naomi's alarm went off, cable channels had found photographs. Someone had located her hospital staff profile. Nothing invasive, just the small headshot and a department listing on the Mercy General website, and placed it beside screenshots of Raymond at previous charity events and procurement dinners and the kind of public gatherings that left behind a very long photographic record. The contrast was not doing Raymond any favors. Her phone had 67 unread messages. She read none of them. She got dressed, made coffee, and drove to work. Jade called at 6:04. You're going to work, Jade said. Not a question. Statement something of between amazement and resignation. I'm driving. There are 67 messages on your phone. I know. Naomi, my patients need me, she said. That hasn't changed. A long pause. You're insane, Jade said with a warmth that made it mean something else entirely. I love you. Study for your exam.
She hung up.
Keisha was at the station when Naomi arrived, one earring in. Reading glasses around her neck this time instead of her hair, which was the only variation in a morning routine that had otherwise been identical for the 6 years Naomi had known her. She looked up when Naomi walked in. "You're back," she said. "I'm always back." Keisha looked at her for a moment, with an expression that was not the look from last night. Simpler than that, quieter. "Good," she said, and went back to her chart. Naomi hung her bag in the locker, picked up the overnight notes, and scanned them. A respiratory case in room 7, 4 years old, stable overnight but worth watching at morning rounds. She made a note, poured the not good coffee, walked the corridor. The ward hummed around her with its ordinary sounds. Monitors, low voices. The ventilator rhythm from room 3. The smell of antiseptic and something warmer underneath it that she had never been able to name precisely, but that meant to her that the night shift had managed well. A reporter called the nurse's station at 9 o'clock, asked for Naomi by name. The charge nurse, operating on reflex, put it through. Naomi picked up. "Ms. Hargrove? We're doing a piece events at the Hargrove Capitol Gala, and we'd love to get your perspective on." "My patients need me," Naomi said. "That hasn't changed." She put the phone down. Not dramatically, just completely. The Monday morning board meeting of Hargrove Capitol was scheduled as a quarterly review. It became something else. 9 board members, 4 independent directors, 2 personal appointments of Raymond's, 3 legacy family positions, one of which Cole held by virtue of succession planning Raymond himself had put in place years earlier to ensure continuity, a detail that had seemed like good governance at the time and now carried consequences Raymond had not modeled for. Cole arrived first. He took his seat, set a single folder on the table in front of him, did not open it. The other board members arrived over the next 12 minutes and took their seats without the usual pre-meeting conversation. The room had the quality of a space where everyone present understood what was about to happen and had collectively decided not to make small talk while they waited for it. Raymond arrived last. He looked like a man who had slept in the technical sense of the word, meaning that time had passed in a horizontal position, but that whatever rest was proposed to accomplish had not been accomplished. The suit was correct, the tie was straight, but his eyes held the flatness of someone operating on structure, alone, on the automated execution of habits that had run so long they no longer required a functioning interior to produce them. He took his seat at the head of the table, looked at the board, looked at Cole. Cole opened the folder. "I'd like to propose a resolution," he said. His voice was even, not cold. Cole Hargrove was not a cold man, and the board had known him long enough to know that. But clear in the way that things are clear when they have been thought through completely enough that feeling no longer interferes with delivery. The resolution requests the immediate resignation of Raymond Hargrove as Chief Executive Officer of Hargrove Capital Holdings, effective end of business Thursday of this week. The room was very quiet. "Before I open the floor," Cole continued, "I want to state for the record that this resolution is not a response to public pressure or media coverage." He looked at his father when he said this, held the look steady. "It is a recognition that the conduct demonstrated Saturday evening is incompatible with the values this company needs to hold in order to remain functional. Not for appearance, for function. There is a difference." Raymond did not speak. He looked at his son with an expression that had no good name, that something like recognition with something like disbelief in a ratio that was uncomfortable to witness, and said nothing. Margaret Osai, independent director, spoke first. She was 61 years old. She had been on the board for 7 years, and she was not a woman who used more words than a situation required. "I second the resolution," she said. "And I'll note for the record that this conversation was overdue before Saturday evening." The vote ran 8-1. The one was Raymond's own appointee. Even Raymond's second personal appointment abstained. When the final tally was recorded, Raymond stood, buttoned his jacket, looked around the table one last time with the expression of a man taking inventory of a room he will not be returning to. He stopped on Cole. Cole held his gaze. Raymond opened his mouth. Whatever he had intended to say, and perhaps he had not decided, perhaps he had simply opened his mouth in the hope that the right words would be there when he needed them, nothing came out. He closed it, turned and walked out of the room. Cole sat alone at the head of the table for a moment after the door closed. Then he picked up the folder and closed it, and sat for another minute in the particular quiet of a room from which something large had just departed. He called Naomi at 10:30 that night. She was still at the hospital, different patient, Different room, same reason she was always still there. Board voted, he said. I know. Owen's assistant called me. A pause. He looked at me, Cole said, when I read the resolution. He opened his mouth and then he stopped. I don't know what I wanted him to say. I've been trying to figure that out for 3 hours. I don't think there's a version of what he could have said that would have been the right thing. There isn't, Naomi said. Gently. Not right now. Maybe not for a long time. That's something you're going to have to sit with. Is that okay? She leaned against the corridor wall, looked at the fluorescent light above her, the particular hum of a hospital at 10:30 at night. It's true, she said. Whether it's okay is a longer question. He breathed. How are you? He said. Actually, she thought about it. Gave him the honest version. Still tired, she said, but differently than last night. Last night I was tired from holding everything together. Tonight I'm just, she paused, finding the right word, released. It's like something was pulled tight for a long time, just let go. Good released or bad released? Good, she said. Definitely good. A pause between them. Come home, he said. I'm finishing a chart. Come home after the chart. Obviously after the chart, Cole. She heard him almost laugh. Almost. I love you, he said. I love you too. She was already moving back toward the station. Go to sleep. I'll be there at midnight. She hung up. Walked the corridor back. Keisha was gone. Shift ended. The night nurse was at the station, handoff notes spread in front of her. Naomi sat down, opened the chart, worked. She stayed until midnight. Then she drove home through the dark and the quiet of a city that did not stop for anything. Not grief or humiliation or justice, or the slow particular relief of something that had been held too tight, finally being allowed to rest. She parked, took the elevator, let herself in. The apartment was dark, except for the light Cole had left on over the stove, which was what he always did when he went to bed before her. A small thing, the kind of small thing that accumulated over years into something that felt like being known. She stood in the kitchen for a moment. Then she reached inside her shirt, found the chain, held the dog tag in her palm in the dark. ER warm, always warm. She thought about her father standing in the foyer with her. She thought about what he had not said, which was that he was proud of her. He would never, but directly. He did not need to. It was present in every other thing he said and did, the way light is present without needing to announce itself. She thought about what she had said to him. About doing it right, about the right process, for the right reasons. About having time. She had time. She tucked the dog tag back against her skin, went to bed. Outside, the city carried on with its ordinary business, indifferent and continuous, the way cities are. Rain on the window. Someone's taxi horn somewhere below. The low, constant sound of a place that does not pause for any single story inside it, no matter how large that story feels to the people living it. Inside, Cole was breathing evenly in the dark. She lay down beside him, closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would go back to work. The day after that, she would go back to work. The children in room 7 and room 11 and room 3 would need what they needed, regardless of what had happened in a ballroom in Greenwich. And she would be there to provide it, because that was job, the actual job, and it had not changed, and it would not change. And that continuity was a small thing. It was in fact everything. She slept. 6 months later, this was where things stood. Raymond Hargrove completed his court-ordered diversity education program in March. 12 sessions at a community college in Hartford. He attended every one. He sat in the third row, not the back, not the front. The third row, which was the choice of a man who had not entirely lost his instinct for positioning, even when the room in question was a fluorescent-lit classroom with plastic chairs and a whiteboard, and an instructor 30 years his junior, who called everyone by their first name. He did not speak during the sessions unless directly addressed. He completed the program in full. What he understood from those 12 sessions was between him and whatever he carried home from that classroom each week. He did not issue any further public statements. He did not give interviews. He did not comment on the legal proceedings, or the board transition, or any of the other consequences that were unfolding with the steady, unhurried logic of things that have been set in motion by their own weight. He lived in the Hartford house. The Greenwich estate had sold in March. The sale was not voluntary in any meaningful sense. The proceeds went primarily toward the legal settlement, which was finalized at $64 million, and which the attorneys on both sides described in their respective press statements, using very different language that somehow arrived at the same fact. The EEC decree required Hargrove Capital to submit quarterly compliance reports to the federal government for 5 years, maintain an independent diversity compliance officer with genuine authority and not merely a title, and implement restructured hiring and promotion protocols that would be monitored externally by an appointed third party. Patricia Odom, lead plaintiff, former director of strategic partnerships, 9 years at Hargrove Capital, passed over for vice president twice, despite having the highest client retention numbers in her division, was offered her position back as part of the settlement terms. She declined. She had started her own firm, but Hargrove finalized her divorce in April. She did not make a public statement. She did not move back to Greenwich. She stayed in Hartford, in a smaller house she purchased with the months from the divorce proceedings, and she enrolled in a community mediation program offered through a local nonprofit. She told no one she had enrolled. She simply went. Once a week, on Thursday evenings, she sat in a circle with other people who were trying to learn how to be in rooms where things had gone wrong and make something useful happen instead of nothing. She was not good at it yet. She was trying to get better. Renee Dawson completed her first quarter as executive vice president of Hargrove Capital. Under her division, client retention improved 4% over the previous quarter. 3 new institutional accounts were signed. A financial publication ran a brief profile on her in May, describing her appointment as part of the company's leadership restructuring. She read the profile once, noted that it spent 2 paragraphs on the circumstances of her hiring and 1 sentence on her actual work, and decided that this ratio would correct itself over time. She was right. Cole Hargrove was confirmed as permanent CEO by unanimous board votes 6 weeks after the gala. The stock, which had fallen 21% in the 2 weeks following the clip going viral, recovered steadily. By April, it had returned to its pre-gala level. By June, it had exceeded it. A financial journalist asked Cole in a brief press availability what he attributed the recovery to. Accountability, he said. Turns out people want to work with companies that mean what they say. That's not complicated. It just requires actually meaning what you say. The journalist wrote it down. Cole moved on to the next question. Doris Hargrove visited the house in West twice in the 6 months following the gala. She brought nothing the second time. She sat in the garden and talked to Elton about Hartford in the early 70s, which they had both experienced from entirely different positions, and the conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. Naomi watched them from the kitchen window while she was doing something else, and felt something she chose not to try to name, because naming it would have made it smaller than it was. Jade finished her junior year with the highest GPA of her college career, which she mentioned to Naomi with studied casualness on the phone in May, and which Naomi celebrated with the particular warmth of someone who had known all along but understood that the discovery had to belong to the person making it. Elton Reed attended a federal procurement review hearing in Washington in May. He submitted the documentation. The bid exclusion patterns across 3 contract cycles were entered into the formal record. The process was slow. It was also correct. Those also correct were not incompatible. Those behaved as though they were. He called Naomi after the hearing. "Well, how did it go?" she asked. "Right," he said. "That's what matters." "Yes," he said. "It is." He retired from Reed Vance formally in June. He stayed on the foundation board. He planted tomatoes in the backyard of the house he had owned for 22 years and spent very little time inside. He was learning at 63 that rest was not the suspension of purpose, but in a different form. He was not entirely comfortable with this lesson yet, but he was learning it. Now, before all of that. 10 days after the gala Tuesday, Naomi came home from a double shift to find an envelope in the mail. Plain white. No return address. Hartford, Connecticut, postmark. She stood in the hallway with her coat still on and opened it. Inside were 2 things. The first was a photocopy. She recognized it without needing to read it. The original had been cream-colored, heavy stock typed in centered format. She had photographed it herself. She knew every word. To compensate for your time. Please step away quietly. This arrangement benefits everyone. Raymond's letter. The one she had returned. The one she had kept a photograph of in a folder on her phone for 2 years. Someone had kept the original. The second thing was a letter, handwritten. 3 pages. The handwriting was the careful handwriting of someone whose hand was not entirely steady, but who had decided that legibility mattered more than appearance. She sat down on the floor of the hallway, coat still on, and read it. Naomi, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you should. I almost didn't send it. I'm in Hartford, and I've been here for 10 days, and I've written this letter 4 times, and I've decided the only way would actually make sense it is to stop rewriting it and say what I mean. I knew about the letter Raymond sent you. The check. I knew when he sent it. I didn't stop him. I told myself it wasn't my place, that he was handling a difficult situation, that I didn't understand the full picture. Those were the things I told myself. They were not true. They were the things I said so I could continue living the life I had without having to examine what that life was built on. I have been doing that for 34 years. I watched what he did at the gala. Every second of it, I was at the top of the staircase when he first crossed the room toward you. I watched his face, since you have seen that face before, in smallest rooms, in private moments, in the quiet of our own home where no one was watching, and he didn't need to perform for anyone. I have seen what he thinks about people he has decided don't matter, and I said nothing. Not Saturday, not ever. Not once in 34 years did I say the thing that needed to be said. I'm not writing this for absolution. I understand the difference between absolution and accountability, and I am not asking you to provide me with either one. I'm writing this because you deserve to know that there was a woman in that house who saw the truth clearly and chose her own comfort over her own conscience for 3 decades. And I am still understanding what that cost. Not what it cost you, what it cost me. I lost myself a long time before Saturday. I just didn't have the language for it until I was sitting alone in a hotel room in Hartford watching the news. The photocopy is yours. You should have the record. I'm sorry, Naomi, not because it helps. Because it's honest. And I think you understand the difference between those two things better than almost anyone I've ever known, which says something about you and something about me, and neither of those things is comfortable to sit with. Bet. Naomi read it twice. She sat on the floor of the hallway in her coat and read it twice, and then folded it carefully, pressing the fold with 2 fingers, and held it on her knee. She did not cry. She had not cried once since the night of the gala, and she understood now that this was not numbness, and it was not suppression. It was something else. The specific stillness that comes from having held yourself upright through something, and having come out the other side, not broken, not triumphant, just intact. Just yourself. Still, she sat on the floor for another minute. Then she stood, took off her coat, hung it on the hook beside the door. She went to the bedroom, opened the drawer on her side of the bed. Inside was a manila folder, the kind that came in packs of 20 from the office supply store, nothing special about it. Inside the folder was a single printed photograph of the letter Raymond had sent 2 years ago. She had printed it once because she had wanted a physical copy. She had not been able to explain the instinct at the time. She understood it now. She placed Bet's letter on top of the photograph. The photocopy beneath both closed the drawer. Not to forget, not to bury anything. To keep it where she could find it, at the exact weight it carried right now, without it being something she had to look at every day. There was a difference between carrying something and being defined by it. Naomi had spent her entire adult life learning to know the difference. Cole found her sitting on the edge of the bed when he got home an hour later. He stopped in the doorway. "You okay?" "Yes," she said. Then, "I got a letter from Bet." He came and sat beside her. She told it said, not reading from it, just telling him the way you tell someone something when the facts are not the hardest part. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "What do you want to do with it?" "Nothing," she said. "I put it in the drawer. That's where it belongs." He nodded. She was honest, Naomi said. "That's not nothing. That's actually something. It doesn't fix anything, but it's something. Do you want to respond?"
She thought about it. Not yet, she said.
"Maybe not at all. I don't know." She looked at the drawer. Some things don't need a response. They just need to be received. Cole put his arm around her. She leaned into him, just slightly, which for Naomi was the equivalent of collapsing in someone's arms. And he understood this and held the weight of it without comment. They sat like that for a little while. Then she said, "What do you want for dinner?" He said, "Whatever you want." She said, "That's not an answer." He said, "Pasta." She said, "Fine." They went to make dinner. The formal resignation was delivered on a Thursday. Raymond's personal attorney submitted it to the board secretary at 9:47 in the morning. 8 paragraphs. The language was careful, distancing, and constructed to minimize admission while satisfying the requirement of departure. Words arranged in an order that meant very little at the level of each individual sentence, but that, taken together, accomplished the function they were designed to accomplish. Rames signed it. His hand did not shake. He was alone in the home office when he signed it. No attorney present, no assistant. He had asked them both to wait in the other room, which they had done without asking why, because people who work closely with powerful men develop an instinct for when the powerful man needs to be alone with the thing he is doing. He signed, capped the pen, set it parallel to the edge of the document. Then he sat in the chair and looked at the wall, not at anything on the wall, at the wall itself, the paint, the light, the baseboard, the small ordinary details of a room he had sat in for years without particularly seeing. The attorney knocked after 5 minutes. Raymond told him to come in. The attorney collected the documents, said the necessary things, let himself out. Raymond sat for another hour. He was not a man given to reflection in the way the word usually meant. His mind was a transactional instrument. It moved forward. It assessed and decided and moved on. 40 years of building things had made him this way, or perhaps he had always been this way, and the 40 years had simply confirmed it. But sits in the chair on a Thursday morning with the resignation he signed, and the attorney gone, he sat with something he did not know what to call. Not grief, not regret in any clean sentence. Something more factual than that. The recognition that he had built something large over a very long time, and that the architecture of it had contained, from early on, a flaw he had either not seen or chosen not to see, and that the flaw had now done what structural flaws always eventually do. He sat with that. Then he got up and made himself coffee and stood at the kitchen window and looked at the Hartford yard, which was smaller than the Greenwich yard and had nothing planted in it. And he drank the coffee and did not think about anything in particular. The public statement aired on Friday at 2 in the afternoon. 12 minutes. Recorded in the home office. Navy suit. Hair combed. He read from a teleprompter with the fixed, careful attention of someone who understood that the camera required him to appear present. He was, in fact, somewhere else entirely. He said deeply regret and hurtful and learning and growth. He said, my words do not reflect the values of this family. He did not say Naomi's name. Naomi watched 40 seconds of it. Not because 40 seconds was what she could tolerate, because 40 seconds was when she had seen enough to understand what she needed to understand, which was that the statement was a statement and not a reckoning, and that the difference between those two things was something Raymond would either come to understand over time or he would not, and either way it was no longer her problem to solve. She turned the television off, called her father. Elton picked up on the first ring. Oh, I watched it, he said. He didn't say my name. I noticed. She waited. The procurement documentation goes to the federal office Monday morning, he said. I spoke to the review board this afternoon. They've seen the preliminary file. They're ready to open. Good. It will take time, Naomi. I know, Dad. A pause. The particular silence between them that had been developing for 34 years. The kind that did not require filling. You're doing okay? He said. I went back to work Monday. That's not what I asked. She looked at the window, rain on the glass again. The city outside, there being the city, which it would continue to be regardless of anything. I'm okay, she said. And then, because it was her father, and he would know anyway, I got a letter from Bet. She heard him go still. She told him what it said. He was quiet for a moment after she finished. What did you do with it? He said. Put it in the drawer. Another pause. Your mother would have done the same thing, he said. She had a drawer like that. I never knew exactly what was in it, but I knew it was the drawer for things that needed to be kept without being looked at every day. Naomi had not known this about her mother. She sat with it for a moment. Get some sleep. Elton said, you do. I'm planting tomatoes tomorrow. Dad, what? They need to go in before it gets too cold. She almost laughed, almost. Good night, she said. Good night, baby girl. She put the phone down, sat in the quiet kitchen, made tea this time, drank it while it was still hot. Then she went to bed. The small ceremony happened on a Saturday in October, not a second wedding. They had talked about what to call it and decided it did not need a name. Names were for things that required explanation. This did not require explanation. It was simply a day they had chosen to claim for themselves, separate from everything that had happened, and everything that had been said, and everything that other people had tried to make their marriage into. Cole's house in Westchester. They had moved in September. 4 bedrooms. A real garden. A yard with an oak tree in the back corner that had been there longer than any of them and would be there long after. The kind of house that existed at exactly her right seats for what they actually were, not what anyone had expected them to be, or wanted them to be, or tried to reduce them to. 28 people. The guest list had been simple, not strategic. Who do we actually want in this yard on this afternoon? The people who answered yes to that question were 28, and they all came. Elton arrived early. He came in a gray suit with no flag pin, which Naomi noticed, and which meant something she did not say out loud. He stood near the garden gate and talked to Cole's college roommate about baseball for 20 minutes, and then talked to Jade's friend from her program about something Naomi could not hear from across the garden. He was, for the first time in recent memory, simply a man at a family gathering, which was its own kind of gift. Jade arrived exactly on time, which was new, in a dress she had borrowed and heels she had clearly not spent adequate time practicing in. She hugged Naomi at the door for longer than usual, and then said something about the heels and made Naomi laugh. A real laugh, the kind that arrived without warning. Owen Holt was not there. He had not been invited and had not expected to be. Naomi had sent him a brief note 2 weeks earlier. She had not said much. Just, I know you knew. I know you made the choices you made. I think you understand why they mattered. In fact, she had not expected patience and had not received one, which was its own kind of answer. Bet Hargrove was not there either. She had also received a note. Shorter. Just, I read your letter. I kept it. Thank you for sending it. Bet had responded with a single sentence on a notacard, no envelope, slipped under the apartment door on a day Naomi was at work. Cole had found it and left it on the kitchen counter without reading it. It said, thank you for reading it. That was all. That was enough. For now it was enough, and for now was all any of them had. Doris Hargrove came. She had not been invited. She appeared at the garden gate 20 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to start, in a coat slightly too warm for the afternoon, holding a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. She stood at the gate with the posture of someone who had prepared themselves, methodically and without self-deception, for the possibility of being turned away. Naomi saw her from across the garden. She walked to the gate. They stood on either side of it for a moment. I wasn't sure if I should come, Doris said. You came anyway. Yes. Then that's what you did. Doris held out the package. Naomi took it and unwrapped it there at the gate while Doris stood watching. Inside was a photograph, old black and white. 2 women standing in front of what looked like a courthouse, laughing at something beyond the frame. On the back, in faded ink, Hartford, 1962. My mother and my aunt, Doris said. They were at a demonstration. They didn't talk about it much when I was growing up. I found this photograph after my mother died. She paused. I wanted you to have it, because I think they would have understood something about what it costs to stand in a room like that one. Naomi looked at the photograph, at the 2 women, laughing, not at the camera. At something outside it, something the photograph had not captured, something that existed only in that moment between them and the world they were standing in. Still laughing, still standing. Thank you, Naomi said. She meant it without qualification. Come in, she said. There's food. Doris came in. She found a seat near the back, near the oak tree, and she stayed there quietly for the rest of the afternoon, and she was there when it mattered, and that was what coming meant. The ceremony itself was 23 minutes. Cole and Naomi had written what they wanted to say, and they said it, standing in the garden in October light, in front of 28 people who had specifically wanted to be there for this specific thing. Cole said, choose you, not instead of everything, as the thing everything else has to measure up against. That's not going to change. Naomi said, I don't need you to save me. I've never needed that. I need you to stay. You've stayed. Every time you stayed. That's the whole thing. Jade cried. She had told herself she would not. She had made a specific private commitment to herself in the car. The way over that, she was not going to cry because she was 22 years old and capable of emotional regulation. And anyway, it was just a small garden ceremony and not even technically a wedding. She lasted until approximately the second sentence of Cole's vows, and then she stopped trying and cried without apology and wiped her face with the sleeve of the did not care about any of it. Elton stood beside Naomi during the ceremony. He did not say anything. He did not need to. He was simply there, 3 inches to her left, which was the only thing that needed to be true. After the ceremony, there was food and the particular warmth of 28 people who genuinely liked each other in a garden in the best hour of an October afternoon. Conversations overlapped. Someone found the croquet set in the garage, and there was a 20-minute period of chaotic and entirely unserious croquet that ended with Jade accidentally hitting the ball into the flower bed, declaring the game officially over. Elton found Naomi near the back fence in the late afternoon when the light had gone gold and most of the guests had begun the gradual drift toward departure. She was standing the nexus of something that had warmed while she talked to 3 different people and forgotten to drink. He came and stood beside her. They looked at the garden together, at the oak tree in the corner, at Cole near the house talking to someone and laughing at something, the easy laugh of a man who was exactly where he was supposed to be. "Good day," Elton said. She agreed. They stood quietly for a moment. "Your mother would have liked him," Elton said. Naomi looked at her father. "She would have liked that he makes you laugh," he said. "When things are hard, specifically. She always said that was the real test. Not whether someone was a good person. Most people are mostly good, whether they make you laugh when it's difficult." "He does," Naomi said. "I know. I've been paying attention." She looked at the oak tree, at the light on the fence, at the 28 people in the garden who had come because they wanted to, which was the only reason to come to anything. "You did it right," she said. "How you came in that night. You told me what you needed." "I know. But you also knew what you were carrying. You could have led with the file, the procurement documentations first. Made it about business first." She looked at him. "You didn't. You were the lead," he said simply. "That was always the right order." She felt something behind her sternum, the particular warmth that has no precise word and does not need one. "Dad, thank you for coming, for how you came, for the procurement review going through the right process, for all of it." He was quiet for a moment. "You don't have to thank me for that," he said. "That's just," he paused, and she could see him searching for the word that was honest without being sentimental, which was always the task with him. That's just at what fathers do when they're doing it right. She looked at him. He put his arm around her shoulders briefly, squeezed once, dropped it. "Go find your husband," he said. She went. That night the house was quiet in the way. Houses are quiet after a day that has held a lot of people and a lot of feeling and has finally returned to itself. Cole was asleep. She could hear him breathing in the dark, even and slow, the rhythm of someone who has set something down. She sat on the edge of the bed. She reached up, found the chain at her neck, lifted the dog tag over her head, held it in her palm. She looked at it. She had been wearing this against her skin every day for 15 years, inside necklines, beneath scrubs, beneath blouses, beneath the navy dress she had bought herself 3 weeks before the worst evening, and the best beginning she had known in recent memory. Always tucked in, always hidden, not from shame, never from shame, but from the specific need she had carried since she was 19 years old to prove something. To prove that the rooms she entered, she had earned, that the position she held, she had built, that when people looked at her and decided she was someone before she had opened her mouth, the decision they were making said nothing about her. She had needed to know, with the kind of certainty that is not intellectual, but physical, bone deep, unshakable. She had needed to know that she was real on her own terms. She knew now. She had known for some time if she was honest. But knowing and trusting the knowing were different. And trusting had required more time, and that was not a failure. That was just how long it took. Some things took as long as they took, and the taking was part of it. She leaned over and set the dog and not in the drawer, on the surface, where the morning light would find it when morning came, warm from her shriek, exactly as itself. She looked at it for a moment. Then she lay down. On a Tuesday in December, 6 months and 3 days after the gala, Naomi arrived at Mertz E. General at 5:58 in the morning. She badged in, took the elevator to the 4th floor, walked the corridor. The ward was doing what wards did at 6 in the morning, running on the low, careful hum of overnight vigilance, preparing to hand itself to the day. Not quiet exactly, just measured. The particular sound of a place that had been doing this work through the night and knew how to do it, and was doing it. She stopped at the station, picked up the overnight notes, scanned them. Room 7. 4-year-old with a respiratory presentation, admitted yesterday afternoon, stable overnight, but the morning team would want to watch his oxygen numbers through rounds. She made a note, poured the not good coffee, which was what there was, and which she had been drinking without complaint for 6 years. She walked the corridor. Outside the window, at the end of the hall, the December sky was doing what December skies did in the hour before proper light arrived. That deep blue that was almost bisect black, but not quite. Something in between. Something that was its own specific thing and did not need to be described in terms of what it was almost. She stood at the window for a moment. She did not think about the gala. She did not think about Raymond or the boardroom or the clip that 9 million strangers had watched, or the legal proceedings still moving through their careful paces, or any of the other things that had composed the last 6 months of her life. She thought about the child in room 7, whose oxygen she was going to watch this morning. She thought about the not good coffee. She thought about the oak tree in the backyard of the house, its Chester, and whether it lost its leaves all at once or gradually, which she had not been paying enough attention to observe. She thought about Elton planting tomatoes. She thought about Jade in her borrowed dress, crying without apology into the sleeve of it. She thought about Cole saying, "I choose you," and meaning every syllable without performance. She turned from the window. She had patience to see. She had work to do. She had a life that was entirely, completely, without qualification her own, built by her own hands, on her own terms, over years that had asked everything of her and gotten it. And she was still here, still standing, still walking this corridor in worn shoes at 6 in the morning, because this was what she had chosen, and she would choose to do it again. She went to work.